大家好，欢迎回到我的频道。我是艾琳，我学习汉语4个月了。Have you ever felt stuck in your progress with learning Chinese characters? Today I'm going to show you 10 tips to accelerate your reading and writing fluency. Make sure you stick around to the end because the tips are going to go from more basic and easy to tips that take a little bit more effort but are worth the payoff. If you want to excel in learning Chinese characters super fast and with ease, you're in the right place. If you're new to my channel, welcome to the Multilingual Mind. On this channel, I talk about tips and tricks to learning and maintaining languages. If you want to see more videos on how to improve your language learning habits and reach your language learning goals, be sure to subscribe. 开始吧. Alright guys, let's start off with some general basic tips. Tip number 1, keep your vocabulary list short. Usually I start out with maybe looking at 4 to 8 vocabulary words in the morning to kind of kickstart my brain with Chinese, and then when I come back from work I might take out my flashcard deck and do some workbook exercises and work a little bit more extensively. But if you start to bring out a list of 30 characters at the same time and you're studying a deck of 30 brand new characters, you're not going to be able to retain that information. So it's better to just start small, and if you make one large flashcard deck, for example, you can just take out the first 5 cards and slowly add in 2 or 3 more each time that you go through the deck. This way you'll be building on the old memory and also learning new words. Tip number 2. Have a problem character, write it out on a larger piece of paper or on a post-it note and put it on your bathroom mirror or on your fridge or on your car's dashboard or anywhere else that you're going to see it throughout the day. If the vocab word is actually a word that you can find in your house, then go ahead and label that. My next category of tips is basic recall and vocabulary retention. Long story short, reading. For tip number 3, we're going to go old school and talk about flashcards. Okay guys, stay with me. I know that flashcards are really outdated, but I think I have a couple of tips that are going to help you to upgrade your flashcard game. First of all, I'm going to have you guys try to cut out as much English as possible. So if it's possible for you to just draw a picture on the other side of the item, then that will work out better sometimes than writing the English, because it cuts out the English entirely and it helps you to just stay in Chinese the whole time. I know this might sound a little bit crazy, but I've done a lot of work with comprehensible input studies, and this is a really nice tactic if you can avoid writing the English. Now, if it's a more complex term, you might just have to write the English. Are you learning simplified and traditional characters at the same time? What I do is I put them into different colors here. So I've got the silver and gold option, and then I also have the black and red option, or you can play around with other colors that you guys like on different types of paper. It just helps me mix it up so I don't always have the exact same looking deck, and maybe it helps motivate me a little bit more to go through my flashcard deck. The next thing I want to say about flashcards is that you should put them in a place where you think that you're going to be able to look through them every day and establish a habit. So this could be your morning coffee hangout spot, or on your coffee table for when you come back after work and you want to just go through the cards, maybe even casually while you're watching TV or something. Or you could put them on your nightstand and go through them every night before you go to bed. But having them in a spot in your house where you are going to look at them every day, it really helps out a lot. So don't keep them hidden away in a drawer because you know you're never going to look at them. Tip number 4, read in Chinese. My go-tos are Mandarin Companion, which is a book series that are geared toward beginner level learners. They have a breakthrough level, and then they have level 1, level 2, and level 3, I believe. If you're interested in those, then I would go ahead and check out, I have another video just reviewing those books. My other go-to is Do Chinese. It is an app. Although I use it a little bit less frequently than the Mandarin Companion level series, I also really enjoy this because you can hear the audio as well. Now, if you really prefer Mandarin Companion books, you could also just go onto Audible and you can find the audio versions for those books as well. But the app for Do Chinese is really nice because they do have a lot of free stories that you can read on there. And then if you want to pay for the paid version, there are a ton of other stories that you can access that are really only accessible to people who pay for the subscription. So the reason I'm mentioning reading, and I would really like to put an emphasis on this, is that you get to see those characters again and again and again in context, which I'll touch on at the end again, because context is key, guys. And every time that I read a Mandarin Companion book, for example, I am able to see the vocabulary again and again, and the grammatical structures are solidified, and the characters, I start to read them faster and faster. So my first time reading through a couple of the first chapters of one of these books, I was pretty slow, and I realized that by the end, I was able to really start picking up the pace, which was really exciting for me because your recognition of those characters is going to get quicker and quicker. Tip number 5, using mnemonics. So the way that I have been loving to do this is using Chinesey. Say what you want, but I actually started my Chinese journey like very early on. One of the very first resources I had was this Chinesey book, and then I later got the app. And I found that it's just a really great way to be able to learn Chinese characters, to be able to connect them to the history behind those characters, and also to be able to connect them to an image. And Chinesey does both. When I picked up the Chinesey book and app for the first time, the language went from being complete arbitrary symbols and sounds to a beautiful systematic language that made so much sense. And that is honestly the moment where I figured out that I really loved this language and I wanted to continue with it. So thank you to Chinesey for that. And I highly recommend it. It's not necessarily the app that I spend the most of my time on, but I will say that the mnemonics that I have used through Chinesey have helped me to solidify those ideas in my head, and I will never forget the characters that I have been learning on Chinesey due to the fact that they connect it with the history, they give you a story, or they give you some sort of a picture to remember it by. And guys, for me it works, and I don't think I'm usually very much of a visual learner. I'm very much the old school traditional type, and this works for me. So I think it will work for everybody. All right, we're on to my last category of tips, and this is going to be all about writing. So guys, don't just read, please write as well, especially because we're talking about characters here, okay? So reading is really great for building a lot of language skills, but the written piece just isn't gonna come unless you actually write. So this leads up to tip number 6. When you're writing out a character, say the word out loud in Chinese. So every time I'll write it out on my character workbook, I say the character's name in Chinese and I look at the English, but I don't say the English out loud, and then move on to the next character. So this is helping to just build only the Chinese and try to keep the English translation stuff to a minimum. Tip number 7, write on actual paper. Here I have some Genko Yoshi paper, the notebooks, so they're Japanese, but it's the same thing, guys. So I think in Chinese it's called Tiansiga paper. And so you're going to be able to better conceptualize where the character goes and the different components of the character, where they go, when you have that little box to write the character in. It just helps develop a better looking character in the end. If you write on regular notebook paper, I've done that before, and then I noticed my characters were getting really wonky, so it's better to use the Tiansiga paper. So I feel like rote writing exercises get a really bad rap, and it shouldn't be the only way that you practice, but I do feel like they have their place. For me, it feels like dipping my toe into the water when you see that brand new chapter and you freeze like a deer under headlights. It just helps break down my initial freak out that I have every single time I open up a new chapter and I think I am never going to be able to learn this set. As I said before, please don't make this your main method. They have their time and place, but if you make this your only method, then you're gonna find yourself a couple months later staring blankly at a bunch of characters, not really being able to figure out exactly what they mean. This is because they aren't in any sort of a context, which I'll touch on in my last tip. Tip number 8, use writing apps. Now, this tip is truly dependent on each person. Some people really enjoy the convenience of being able to take their writing practice with them wherever they go. I'll be honest and say that I have only had a little bit of experience with the couple of characters that were presented on Hello Chinese, as well as a couple of the free lessons that were presented on the Skritter app. The Skritter app definitely looks a lot more preferable. It's definitely completely geared towards writing, right? So they're specialized in that. So I did really enjoy the Scritter app, but whether or not I'm willing to pay for another app right now, there's a lot of apps out there with subscriptions. So if you know me at all, I like to try out the free subscriptions a little bit, see which one weighs out the highest, and then pay for only the ones that I think that I really need. So I think it also really depends on your lifestyle. If you don't have a lot of time to just sit down and write on actual paper in your living room because you're always on the go, maybe you're in a bus or on a train somewhere and this is your daily life of commuting, then I think that the writing apps are really going to be really nice for you, because you can't really take a notebook and pencil around with you in that type of a situation. So if you're on the go, I would definitely go for the writing apps. I would recommend Scritter the best, and because Hello Chinese really only has a couple of them that they teach to you. But I think that that is the route to go. Tip number 9, chat with a native. If you don't know a native speaker in your area already, or you think that it might be hard to find them, maybe you don't have the chance to do something like Meetup, or maybe your level is pretty low like mine, then I would really recommend an app such as Tandem. I know that there are other ones that are really similar. I've really enjoyed Tandem, and then when I find out that I like talking to somebody and we've talked for a couple of days in a row maybe, then I will add them over to WeChat, and then you'll be able to actually build relationships and maybe go past the conversation of what are your hobbies and what's your name and how old are you and where do you live exactly. Those types of conversations can get really boring really fast. So I would really recommend the Tandem app and then switching them over to maybe WeChat so they don't get lost in the sea of people that are trying to send you messages, because you can't really reply to them all. Within this category, I would like to say that you should shamelessly use the vocabulary that you're currently learning in your textbook. They don't know that you're studying Chapter 4 hobbies. Go ahead and ask them what their hobbies are. Something else that has also really helped me out in the past is I have a gold notebook here, and I write down all the words in here and the new ones that I learn from my chats and that I think are really useful, and then I will look back in here and try to use them with another person later so I can practice using that word, and then they can correct me and say something like, oh, that really doesn't work in that sentence or whatever, and then you'll learn how to use your brand new words. And honestly, I have learned words through my chat sessions that I will then see in later chapters in my textbook or in my Mandarin companion books. It all ties in together, guys. So it will not be a waste of your time. Okay, tip number 10. Tip number 10 is my favorite tip because it is context is key. Make sure that you are writing your vocabulary words out in some sort of a context, not just by themselves. Although you can, but maybe not always. Okay guys, so workbook exercises do help, and yeah, they are in context, but let's try to branch out a little bit from that okay? So you're gonna start out with your whatever character list you're using, okay? For me, it's like the integrated Chinese character workbook. I believe I have it here. And so you are gonna go ahead and crack open your book and then go ahead and look at the first character, or maybe the first 2 or 3 characters, and you're gonna just start writing out sentences that you're just gonna make up. Maybe they're funny, maybe they're a little ridiculous, or maybe they're just totally normal. And sometimes what I like to do too is to write out a fake conversation, and so I'll just label the people like A and B, and then I will just write out a little mini conversation, and this really helps to bind all of those vocabulary words in your memory. And some of them you're gonna use more than once. So I usually make myself write out one sentence with each character, and then I might like repeat one of the characters in the next one. For example, if like the first 2 words are ni and hao, then maybe I'll make person A say ni hao, and then the person B also says ni hao. So that way I'm using ni in the first one and hao in the second one. I will say that if you do use the character workbook from Integrated Chinese, just be careful because some of those are 2 character words, but you'll see them separately listed. So you're going to want to look in the actual textbook to see how they are connected together. A really good example of this is 睡觉, so to sleep. So I will say that before using this tip, you should just make sure that you're a little bit familiar with how to use the characters. So this is not an activity for when you just started with, chapter 6 and you've just started looking at the vocabulary list. Make sure that you do some of the workbook exercises so you know how they go together, you know a little bit about the grammatical structures that you're going to see in that chapter and how it should kind of look before you're able to compose your own sentences. Just because you don't want to solidify grammar structures that maybe are not correct. Do you have another method that you're using to learn Chinese characters? I would love to see your methods in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to see more videos on the resources and methods that I am using to learn Chinese. That's all I've got for today. 下次见. Bye bye.